Thank you for that. I know that was very needed. And it's interesting because for those of you that are listening to the recording later, we did the invocation first before the topic that we're going to be talking about. And so it's interesting because I know we had kind of talked about what we were going to talk about before. And I had heard at the time, like, no, I think we need to talk about, or when I went and looked at the outline, I was like, I think we need to talk about overwhelm. And then that's what you did. I think you must have switched and
yes, exactly.
did the other one because it was like overwhelm, because it's so needed right now. And in that invocation, just the noise right now is really loud, and it's really challenging when you're going through personal stuff. It's hard when you're going through larger empathic stuff, and then maybe it's not personal, but you're greatly affected by the larger empathic stuff of the world. And just, also inviting Reiki to release those ways and worries of the world, even if it's just for a minute, to carry those for you is really helpful. And to have that opening to the blessing fields is really, really helpful when you are in overwhelm, because it's those times that you're navigating that it's like, what do I do? How do I use Reiki? How does Reiki help? How can I navigate this from a place of consciousness, of a higher consciousness, a higher frequency? Some days we're able to do that. Other days we're fully in the duality, and it's more challenging to find that path. And so I just really appreciate the reminder that we have these tools here for us through Reiki to be able to navigate these timeframes. And in all transparency, Danni texted me during the invocation and also said, we don't do that very often, but also said, this is exactly what I need right now, and that her and I are facing overwhelm. Colleen, I know you're facing some things in your life that I don't know if you get overwhelmed by, because I don't know if you do anymore, but
Just like anybody.
just like anybody. And it's just the different seasons of life. And that's what Danni was texting. It's like, I really need this because we go through the different seasons at different times. And that's even in our personal lives. And then let alone everything that's going on in the world that also affects all of us. So anyways, I appreciate that invocation.
Yeah, and it did come through as overwhelm. And, I think it was last week or the week before that, you talked about imposter syndrome. And sometimes, in overwhelm, we forget that we don't have to be perfect at all of this in order for it to work for us. And I think that's another thing with Reiki, is that sometimes we feel like we have to do it right, or get it right, or we're not doing enough, or we have to earn it or deserve it. And it's one of the things we talk about all the time, is really understanding the nature of Reiki energy, being that life force energy, and it's conscious and compassionate. And it's not requiring us to earn it, deserve it, do it right, get it right, do all the rituals exactly the right way. And when you're in a place of overwhelm, sometimes and I remember back before I really started really working with Reiki on the fly, that I used to sometimes feel like, well, if I'm going to use Reiki, it's just one more thing to do. Like, okay, I have to do this one more thing. I have to do my Reiki right, and I have to get it right. And then it adds to the overwhelm. And I know I talk about this all the time in this group, but I think it's so relevant. Is, I learned about Reiki on the fly through times and cycles in my life when I was really overwhelmed and very, aside from it being a feeling of overwhelm, is literally like so much to do every day and so many things to manage. And that's when Reiki came in and said, Reiki on the fly works, Reiki in the moment. Just, it's probably out of all the things that when we're teaching, like in my classes and the next step classes and all of them, is one of the number one healing that so many of us have, is that we have to do it right and get it right and do it all a certain way, and then the energy will respond to us. And it's a teaching that we have to actually like let go of because it's so ingrained. The need for rituals to do it right is so ingrained that, going all the way back through school and just life in general. And so Reiki comes into, I think it actually really is just teaching us that it's, the mantra or one of the things, that energy and the animal Reiki energy, the tree of life energy taught us, is that it's simple, practical, and efficient. And I remember when that came in and it was like, well, I just never thought of Reiki in that specific language, like simple, practical, and efficient. And yet, like today, simple, practical, and efficient is really helpful. And the fact that I can just invite it, however, and for whatever level you're in, whatever symbols you work with, whatever lineage you're in, all of that is the stuff that we work with as human beings. The energy of Reiki is showing up because you invite it. And inviting it doesn't have to be like I have to specifically stop and draw the symbols and make sure that I've done everything correctly. I've found that I've said to Reiki so often in my spirit guides that I work with, I'm like, I invite you even if I forget to ask. I also invite you if I forget to ask and I need to send it back with the distance symbol from before I should have asked to begin with. It's like, I invite you to go back when I wish I had remembered to invite you, before a certain event or something has occurred, to go back to before and let the energy come in. So at the same time, if you have the time to go deeper with your practices, I know I just taught and some of you are here that were in the Corona class that we just did for 3 days. It's like, that's the best 3 days ever. Helene, you're right below me in my boxes. I couldn't see you. It's like, oh, it's so good to get to immerse like that, to be immersed in the energy and be with community and be with others, and which is the other reason that we love being here in these groups, is that we're in community, because we need community. And I know for me that when we come here every week, we're heading into 3.5 years of the distance Reiki share now, and longer than that, almost. It'll be 4 years in April. Every week I come here and I'm so glad I get to be here and with community. It's really meaningful to all of us to come together. And I think it's important to always acknowledge, it was catching my attention in the invocation, to really acknowledge, all the different viewpoints that are here and the diversity that's here, the places people live, the choices you need to make, and that it's all about the bigger picture of wellness and wholeness and balance and peace, stability, kindness, and so that each person can be free to be in their circumstances. And it's more about the Reiki energy bringing in clarity of mind so that you are clear about your choices, your decision making, what is, specific for you and your priorities today. And I was observing when it came in about the noise in the world, that there's also important aspects to be listening to about the world. And at the same time, you need to be in your own clarity first. And that it's not your clarity of mind, your clarity of you is really authentically yours, so that you can be clear about your choices, your decisions, your thoughts, and where you are in any actions that you're going to take and what needs to happen first. Some people are in very serious personal situations that need to be addressed first. They're the priority and they're the focus. Some people are in amazing thriving and creativity and manifestation, and you need to be able to be in there first. And you get to manifest and create and innovate, because that's equally important as anything else. And so in the idea of overwhelm, I know sometimes the overwhelm can even come from so many possibilities. How do you pick? So many things you want to do. How do you pick? How do you prioritize? And that's where those blessing fields that come in. It's like just receiving the blessings, because it's an actual Reiki energy. Blessings are a life force energy. And so receiving those can help you with the clarity of mind of what that actually means for you. The same thing with the energy of peace. And what does that mean for you? It's unique and individual, and it starts on a personal level. And the other thing that was showing up that I didn't, the words didn't come through to say is, it doesn't mean you feel peaceful all the time while you are advocating peace. So I think that also allowing for the idea that all things can be true at the same time. You can have that inner peace and not feel peaceful. You can, know that you're staying stable and kind and not feel stable and kind. So they can coexist at the same time. And that's where Reiki energy comes in and balances it all for you. And it can bring you to your personal peace and what that means for you. And of course, right now, we're even heading into other times of the year where we're going to be going into more family and holidays and busyness and decision making, and can amplify even from here, and at a time that the Earth's energy is telling us to go within. Although some of you in the Southern Hemisphere, it's going into the full light of summer, so it's a little bit different for you. Those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, we're being called to go deeper within. At the same time, things get busy. So just knowing they can coexist, you can, I had to let go of the perfection. Like, do I have to feel perfect about all this? And discovering that's what Reiki helped me with too, because I'm not. I'm not enlightened yet, and I'm still human. So still have that duality of consciousness.
Well, it's just also about the perfection piece, is that the other part of it is that, and calling in it when we need it quickly, is not having to earn it is another piece of that. And that unlearning that Reiki comes in, even, despite us thinking that we have to earn that it's going to help, or that we have to get every single ritual right in order to earn that it will come in. Or let's say the distance symbol. If we don't get the distance symbol right, especially when we're first starting out, which is very, it's a really long symbol that's hard to remember when you're first starting out. That, if I don't get that exactly right, does Reiki turn on? Does it come to me? And that's another piece of that Reiki on the fly teaching, that Reiki on the fly unlearning piece of it, is that, um, we don't have to earn it. I think in at least this society, every part of this society is taught that we have to earn everything that we receive, everything that we get. And with Reiki, it's really taught that you don't have to earn it, that it will come to you regardless of if you get that distance symbol exactly right, if you spend an hour in the rituals or 1 minute in the Reiki on, Reiki, come to me, or just even saying the symbols quickly, that both ways are valid, and that sometimes it's really nice when we have the time. It's really meaningful. It's really healing when we have the time to be in the full ritual of it. I think many of us would, if we could, spend a lot of time in that place, in that space, in the ritual, in the um, deep meditation practice, but it's just not reality for a lot of us for different seasons of our life. And sometimes it is, other times it's not. And we do have to be able to call upon this energy that we can have support us, this energy, these practices, these tools, this muscle memory that Reiki is also, um, that can help support us in all cycles and all seasons. And how that is so important, and how it is, it's such a nice piece of the teaching of Reiki, that we don't have to earn it, that we can just rely on it in these times when we need it, in these times when we are in overwhelm. And I do like the piece that you talked about, Colleen, about perfection. And we are in duality, and at the same time there's growing and expansion in the shadow side of our emotions, and there's growth and expansion in the light side of our emotions and our world, that we don't always, um, feel peaceful, or we don't always, that we do have anger, that we do have grief, that we do have sadness, that we do have frustration, those, all of those pieces. And at the same time, we do have joy, and we have love, and we have, um, excitement, and we have hope and potential, and all of these kind of lighter sides of the duality in these time frames. And that Reiki is going to, it's not like, oh, if I feel angry today, or frustrated today, or grief today, that Reiki then isn't there in those moments too. I think sometimes we forget that, because we when we're in a spiritual path, when we are trying to continually be at a place of a higher, I don't want to use the word higher vibration, but I can't think of a better term, when we're trying to live in a path of love, right? Love for ourselves, love for the world, love for other people and plants and animals. When we're trying to live in that path, there can be a little bit of guilt that maybe we're not in those emotions 100% of the time. And especially when we're in overwhelm, and, those emotions can percolate a little bit easier. They're there at the surface, a little bit closer to the surface, or we feel them because we're in dualities. Our nervous systems are all wired and all of those things. And so we can feel guilt, and again, like we maybe aren't earning Reiki in those time frames, but it is also there in those time frames. And that is when sometimes we learn the most. I want to have the opportunity that we learn the most in all sides of our dual emotions. But because we learn a lot in love, we learn a lot in peace, we learn a lot in those emotions as well. But sometimes when we're in our frustration or our imperfection or our anger or overwhelm, that is also the places where Reiki comes in and heals, releases layers that might be related to so many different things in this life, past life, ancestral history that is causing the frustration in this moment. This is where we might have these really big aha eureka moments that Reiki is teaching us about, where it's healing the layers that might be causing these things, that might be causing these reactions to what is happening in our world. So there's a lot of wisdom and knowledge in these time frames too, and that Reiki is there, our spiritual path, our spirit guides. It's, not just Reiki, it's any kind of spiritual path that we might follow, our angels, our, different energy modalities that we might do. We talk about Reiki in this circle, so I'll just use that as the example, but that it is there to help us in that and support us in that, and, allow us to move through it. It's not all about constantly trying to shift out of that perspective. Sometimes it's about sitting in it, allowing it to flow through so that we can move through it. Sometimes it's about, as Colleen said, trying to act with kindness and stability in your outside world, even if that's not how you necessarily feel in your internal world, to those around you, which is also a path of love. When we're feeling challenged internally, it's like you think about that for a child, right? You can think about it for a child, like, okay, as a parent, even though I'm feeling so frustrated internally, how am I going to act externally to my child? And that's not any different to other people. And at the same time, sometimes we do have to say something. Sometimes we do have to draw boundaries. So it's not saying that those are the path of love too sometimes. So it's not like it's like Colleen said, it's a perfect thing. But it is a part of what Reiki also helps us do, when we can turn to it, when we can turn to our spirit guides for this kind of help in navigation, this kind of support in navigation. And then also listening to us, listening to that heart, listening to that spirit and that wholeness inside, that peace inside, that balance inside. Because that is a piece of it as well, is that it is helping to bring us to that. So I think that's what I would like to add with it all. I see we're getting time to be in breakout rooms. So
Just want to add one more thing with it as a quick how-to when we talk about Reiki on the fly. I just a lot of times just think Reiki and Reiki on. Mrs. Takata taught Reiki on. I can do that. Sometimes the Reiki on the fly needs to be done, silently to myself, and it can be in any given moment. So just recognizing that what we're talking about with that is that there are the times when maybe we're going to draw all the symbols and we're going to put them in front of us, but creating that field of energy is really an invitation. So how you give that invitation is up to you in any given moment. So we know one way of activating it all is through drawing symbols. We place them in our hands. We may place them in our chakras, or, I'll do a big one in front of me and bring it into my body, sending it around the room and the space above me and below me and within me, and creating that energy. But there's plenty of times I need to just think it, like, okay, Reiki on all the way around me, above me, below me, within me, and just allow it to come through that way. Other times I love getting to take the time with the symbols. The way that we invite it is for us. The Reiki energy works with us however we invite it. The experience that you have with it is one way if you're going really deep into it, and it's another way if you're doing it on the fly. And all of the ways are valid and good and helpful. So, just thinking about what was in the invocation from a Reiki on the fly perspective was really inviting the Reiki energies. So the power of love for me is the power symbol. The power of the divine mind is the mental emotional symbol, the Usui symbols. And the power of the divine heart is the distance symbol. And the light of the earth and the light of the heavens and is the Usui master symbol, and the igniting your spirit within is the holy fire master symbol. Divine compassion is all the Karuna symbols, and then tree of life is the animal Reiki symbol. And even if you don't have all those symbols and attunements, the energy is there for you. So what was being done in that invocation was an invitation to the Reiki energy, and then asking it to let go of those burdens we're carrying. When you let go of those burdens, they get healed. And one of the things Robyn said that I think is also important is that sometimes you do still need to sit in them. Letting them go doesn't mean you never look at it again. You may still need to be, addressing what you've let go of, but you're going to be able to do it from a different perspective, from another way of looking at things, a different perception. So the letting go and then the bringing in, because the other word that was really powerful in that invocation was sovereignty. And it took me a while to really grasp what that meant. And that meant that I get to stand alone within myself, recognize my wholeness, know that it exists within me, regardless of even my feelings or outside experiences. And so I learned to ask for that, and then learn to ask for those blessings, and opening those blessing fields, and the gratitude of saying thank you to everything, and how that brings in that part of us that really is our authentic self. Waking up that love that we are, waking up our higher mind, waking up our pure heart, knowing that that's actually who we really are, even when we have those external burdens. So you can just quickly think those things. You don't have to be detailed. And most of the time, we don't know all the different things there are to know about it all. So just really receiving the Reiki energy, like, would you just handle it for me, and let it do that. So I just wanted to finish up with that, with the awareness of, for those of you that maybe are not familiar with Reiki on the fly, it means just invite it. And if you forget, send it back to before you forgot, or remember it in the moment, however, and let go of the need for it to be perfect, because that comes from us. It doesn't come from the Reiki energy.
Gonna say, to make, like you said, sometimes you do have to sit in it. And sometimes what that means is even to cry. And as Danni said in the chat,
I've been crying a lot this week.
Yeah. Me too. Making space.
Not even knowing it's there, and all of a sudden it's like, oh no, I'm gonna cry. I get the squeaky cry.
And what that can do is make space. What it does is it lets it go. Sometimes it's harder to hold it right here. So then you're having to hold it all the time. It's like holding a weight all the time, you know? And so if you can let that go and let that out, that can be what makes space for the new, you know? So thank you, Danni, for that reminder.
Yeah, sometimes I'll even specifically watch a movie or a program that I know will help me cry because I know I need to, and it's all stuck in there, and it's like, oh, I need to let it out.
I
So,
definitely do
same
that too,
thing.
Colleen. I'm like, I know there's a song that's going to make me cry, or I'll watch a little Christmas movie that this makes so much space. I was telling Colleen last week, I go, well, I'm sounding like Minnie Mouse this whole entire week whenever I talk. It's very high pitched, but it gave me space to do it.
Well, and also with those movies and things that make you feel really good too. Like it, brings it all in, like, oh, it's so good. Some of the songs and the music and things. Yeah. So anyway.
Okay, well, just real quick, the announcements that we didn't make is we
Oh.
have animal Reiki classes coming up this week. We have Animal Reiki Master Wednesday through Friday and Animal Reiki 1 and 2 this weekend. So if you're listening later on YouTube, we would still have space for you in our Animal Reiki 1 and 2 this weekend. The date is the Masters 25th through the 27th, and 1 and 2 is October 28th and 29th. And then Colleen has a 7-day Karuna Reiki Masterclass, Holy Fire 3 Karuna Reiki Masterclass with William Rand in Hana, Hawaii, an amazing class and experience. To find out more information about that, you actually have to go to reiki.org. That's where the information and the sign up for that is. And then we will be having our annual gratitude ceremony during the Distance Reiki Share on November 7th. So you can look for more information about that. All you have to do, if you're a regular here, or even if you're new, you just have to show up here at this time, this time, Tuesday mornings, and we will just do it during the Distance Reiki Share. We'll probably say, maybe bring a journal or something like that. But we'll talk more about that next week. And then also we will be having a free webinar on November 28th at noon Pacific. And that is all about developing your intuition and your spirit guides. And so we'll talk more about that next week. I know we are out of time, so we'll talk more detail about that next week. All right, did I get everything?
Just that the next step Reiki classes and the Explore the 12 Heavens of Consciousness classes start in January.